Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49 and it begins right now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome on into the American Idiots Podcast. I am Money Mike. I'm going to be joined shortly by my co-host, the Manic Hispanic. But I definitely want to welcome everybody in. Another week and another tough, heavy subject as we get into more of the Russia stuff over the past week. I'm going to dip our toes a little bit into the State of the Union tomorrow through talking through these three big subjects that we have for you tonight. In each one, really, I thought about this. This is really the highlight of what Joe Biden is going to be looking to present tomorrow during the State of the Union. Of course, before we get started, I want to remind you, if you are watching on Facebook, go ahead and give our page a thumbs up and like it and share it with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to our page, hit the notification bell. That way you're notified whenever we update. And if you're listening to our audio-only versions on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, all that good stuff, go ahead and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and bring on my co-host, a man who sets records every time he puts on a show there in his area, Manny Hispanic. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing wonderful, man. I can't say I set records every time I put on a show, but it was really nice to have set a record for our attendance in November. We took December and January off, and then because our product isn't out until the 4th Saturday of February, that's almost like 3 months off. And to see that we had more people at our February event than we had at our November event was just really awesome.
Absolutely. And the fact that, we talked about, and there you go, Aaron says Saturday was so much fun. I've heard very good things. And, you were talking about the connection that your guys are getting with the crowd and everything. So if you are in the South Central Arkansas area, go ahead and check out SCW there in Mountain Pine, Arkansas, because for the price, there is absolutely no better show you can go to and, have a family-friendly environment.
Yes, sir. Just outside of Hot Springs is Mountain Pine. We are there because of the cost of the building, actually. We get that building at an incredible cost. So we decided to host it there while we try to build up our fan base. Once we can get our fan base to a large enough capacity that we need the bigger building, then I'll start looking at actually bringing it into Hot Springs.
Right.
But I mean, it has really just been wonderful. The turnout, the interaction with the fans. They recognize the wrestlers that we bring in, which is great. That's always great. As a promoter, you want to see that connection between the talent you bring in and the fans that are coming in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Manny, tonight, I know you haven't been able to pay too much attention this week with the show coming up and everything like that. But tonight we're going to hit three pretty big topics. We're going to talk about COVID and how it seemingly has disappeared as far as the threat. I mean, I'll be honest with you. For the first time in 3 years, I searched for a COVID video and only like 3 relevant ones pulled up. Like that is very telling. We're also going to talk about President Biden announcing his SCOTUS pick, Ketanji Brown Jackson, I believe is how you pronounce it. And then, of course, we're going to get into the meat and taters of Russia and everything. But Let's kick it off here with COVID, and we do have a story from NBC News on the latest with these mask mandates and everything being lifted.
Listen, the CDC is just updating its mask guidance. Good news, most of you can ditch them. But of course, there is a catch. The agency says they're only recommending you get rid of your mask if COVID hospitalizations are low where you live. Do I have to tell you this is a big deal? It's a big deal, right? Because it's a place this country has not been in for a while. The last time the CDC changed its mask guidance was back in July. But now you have COVID cases going down pretty dramatically. All but 3 states are seeing a drop of at least 25% of new cases. Check out your screen. Take a look at where we were a month ago. We were seeing something like 750,000 cases a day. Now look at it, 75,000. Hospitalizations are also down 44% across the country in the last couple weeks. So the agency behind the scenes, based on our reporting, has been working for weeks to come up with new guidelines. And their announcement comes, I don't know, if you look at what states are doing, a little on the later side, because already we've seen states around the country dropping mostly their mask mandates. Dr. John Torres helps break down this new guidance from the CDC. Dr. John, do what you do so well and plain English it for me. When do I need to wear a mask indoors and when don't I? How do we know this?
And Hallie, first off, you're right, because they did last do the recommendations back in July. But at that time, they were using cases as metrics, cases and positivity rates. Well, now fast forward to this time frame, and what they're saying is it's really hard to use cases as the metric because Omicron has kind of put a wrench in those works. And so instead what they're looking at is hospitalizations, and they're looking at the amount of beds in hospitals that are taken up by COVID patients. In other words, what's the pressure in the hospitals, and using that as the metric. So what they're saying here is they're dividing it into 3 groups, low, medium, and high. If you're a low and medium group, for most of us, they're saying you do not have to wear masks indoors. Medium, if you're high risk, talk to your doctor about whether you should be wearing a mask anyway. But when you hit that high area, that high area of risk because of the hospitalizations and the beds that are taken up, they're saying that everybody should start wearing masks indoors. And so that's the big difference, the metrics they're using, and they're giving us a little better guidelines along the way. And I think if you look at it, the one big thing to remember is we are still 74,000 cases. We are still 1,700 deaths a day, unfortunately. But the big change here is the fact that over 70% of the country has some immunity to COVID. And the fact that this Omicron seems to be a little less dangerous than the other variants, and that's certainly helping out, Hallie.
I have to thank John, Dr. John. I'm candidly, I'm hopping on a flight later tonight, and I will be wearing a mask because that is what you do on planes, right? Because there is a mask mandate for federal transportation. It expires in a few weeks, I think middle of March. You now have this flight attendants unit that is pushing back, saying, you know, they want that to be extended, basically. Is it too soon to talk about masking on planes, masking on trains, et cetera?
You know, I think it's too soon to a certain extent for a very certain reason, and that's mainly because of what's happening on the international stage. You know, internationally, and it's hard to separate just domestic flyers happening domestically and those coming in from other countries. And in other countries, the mask mandates around the world are on airplanes everywhere, on public transportation, pretty much everywhere. And so I think that's one of the reasons we need to keep it here. Plus, it's hard to judge who's on their vaccination rate, who is staying on there, even though they're sick. You know, those can cause problems. And you are in close quarters, both at the airport, on the airplane, or at the train station and on the trains. And so I can see them pushing that back a few more weeks or a few more months until we get these cases even more under control, and then possibly doing the same thing of the low, medium, and high risks for flights here. But again, remember, this is a global stage we're working on. And globally, there's still a lot of COVID out there. And so we need to make sure we protect ourselves around the world.
Generally, Dr. John, in your professional opinion, you think the CDC is making the right call here when it comes to changing up the mask guidance?
I do think they're making the right call. Number one, because people are a bit fed up with wearing masks. We've been doing it for 2 years. And so I think they're getting that message as states and localities are starting to saying mandates can be withdrawn. And so they're pushing it to the local level, which I think they need to do, but giving them good, hard guidance saying, here are the specifics, here are the metrics, and here's what we think you should do with those metrics. And so I think that's going to help a lot, both in getting people not have to wear masks as much, but also realizing when they do need to put them on.
Dr. John Torres, thank you very much for that breakdown. It's great to see you.
Thanks for watching.
So, Manny, you know, sitting there listening to what the doctor was saying there, Dr. Torres was saying there, it was very interesting to me. He said that instead of looking at the number of cases that are active, they're now looking at hospitalizations. And I don't know about you, but for me, it was like a realization and a light bulb turned on. I was like, shit, why haven't they been doing this from the beginning? Because really, death, yes, is a big deal and what have you in the early going, sure. But why?
No. I will not let you pull death into this in the beginning, because in the beginning, they were fudging the numbers. We have already established this. It didn't matter how you died. If you had COVID, they counted it as COVID death.
True. So if you take death off the table, really the only threat for COVID was the fact that these people would end up potentially in a hospital and our hospital situation couldn't maintain itself. Why weren't they looking at it this way from the beginning? Like, really, that is the only outside threat, is not having enough hospital personnel or enough hospital resources to be able to, handle the load. So once that load started to drop off and the hospitalization started to drop, we should have been looking at this, I'm going to be conservative and say 6 months ago.
Because a declaration had already been made by the president, and they were not going to back down off of that.
Absolutely.
They had a point to prove, period, and it didn't matter what the actual science said. They were going to say what they wanted to say. They were not going to back down. That's why we've been talking about the recovery numbers. Why haven't they been showing recovery numbers? Because it does not back what they are pushing. Very good point.
I mean, the Democrats have done a fantastic job of politicizing this virus. I'll say that much. They've gotten a lot of people fired up over it. But for the past 7-8 months, like he said, we've seen these people that are, quite frankly, tired of wearing masks. And it's been growing and growing. Do you think that that's what led the CDC to change their guidance? Or do you think the CDC is just like, well, shit, we should have been doing it this way all along?
I think that whoever has been patrolling the CDC for the Biden administration has relaxed the reins on it, and they are now able to kind of make decisions for themselves instead of pushing the Biden agenda as far as it comes to the political process of COVID. Now then, while you were paying attention to the whole hospitalization thing and why haven't they been doing it, the thing I realized was you noticed that they really did not talk about vaccinations.
I did notice that, and that was very interesting.
The closest he got to saying anything was 70% of the people have some immunity. Now, that doesn't mean strictly vaccination. That means some of them have gotten COVID and the natural antibodies are there.
Now,
some people, like I believe myself, I've got nothing to back it up on. I haven't been tested or anything like that as far as my genetic makeup. Mm-hmm. But being around people that have tested positive and never having a positive test, I believe I've been immune to this.
You very well could have been, because like you said, you rode in a vehicle in the cab of a truck.
Yes, sir.
Somebody that was positive. I definitely remember that. One thing, though, us being a political podcast, the thing that also screams out and comes to the forefront of my mind is, in addition to the why now, it's interesting this, all occurs within about a 72-hour period before the State of the Union address. Do you think this is a calculated political move by the Biden administration so that Joe can come out tomorrow and he's going to have a tough go of things that he can brag about? Do you think it's his... Do you think that they did this so that he can have another talking point tomorrow in his first State of the Union where he can say, hey, I got rid of COVID. I got rid of the masks. We did what we needed to, and it's because of the vaccine. You know what I mean?
That's very possible. I didn't think I never even put that together, but you are correct. That very well could be one of the things that he was planning on. If we can end this mask mandate before I go into that State of the Union address, I can brag that I got rid of that. So yeah, you may be touching on something right there, Mike.
I mean, he's got a very tough go of it, for sure, in the State of the Union tomorrow. And, of course, he will probably bring up COVID in addition to Build Back Better, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. But you know, you look at what he said also about flights and whether we could see this potentially go down, or whether we could see, you know, this mask mandate come to an end, whether it be, you know, in a couple weeks, I think she said is when it's supposed to end, or whether they extend it. You know, with flights, so you're talking about a lot of people in a very small confined space.
Yes.
The
Not only that, you also
airport,
have to think about the fact that you are um, recirculating the air that everybody is breathing.
exactly. I don't necessarily mind the fact that they're going to keep those for a little while longer, just that, you know, as long as there's some scientific reason for it. Absolutely. If you want to study and make sure that, you know, particles aren't getting recirculated or something, or you need to put in a new filter in this sucker or what have you to try to filter out COVID, whatever. I'm all for that. That makes sense in that aspect, especially. I don't necessarily, though, agree with him where he said you can't really do it for domestic flights and you can't control it for domestic flights, but not international. Like, all you have to do is say, hey, if you're going outside of the borders of the U.S. on this flight, wear your damn mask. That's all you got to do. Like, you can definitely differentiate between a domestic flight and an international flight. I don't quite understand where he's coming off saying that he doesn't think that he thinks it would be hard to enforce the two separately.
Um, I don't know. I honestly don't. You would think that whenever they got on the plane, you've got so many stewardesses or attendants, whatever they're called now. Um, you have that many on a flight, regardless of if it's an international flight or a domestic flight. So I'm not sure why it would be harder to um, police one and not the other.
Well, I mean, hell, not only that, but when you look at it, the point of masking is to protect you from somebody that may have the COVID virus. We already know, and we already have the rules in place that if you test positive within a certain amount of time, I think it's still 2 weeks, you cannot get on a flight inside of the US. Why not use the rules that we have in play? So, of course, I understand that everybody can lie, but hell, require that they show a negative test to get on the flight. As you're getting in addition to checking that boarding pass, I'm checking that negative test until, you know, you feel so comfortable as to release that as well. Use what you have in place. Don't add to it at this point, is I guess what I'm getting
It,
at.
it's the visual lie, Mike.
Mm.
If you have a virus going around, but you have people that look like everything is normal, it's hard to really show that there's a virus going around. However, if you can show all these people with masks on and you say, hey, we've got a virus, it somehow becomes more effective to the human mind.
Very good point. Very good point. I mean, and like you said, you know, it's very interesting to sit here. We talked about it earlier. And timing is everything. This is making me wonder, you know, how quickly COVID has died off of this big threat. A month ago, we were talking about Omicron and whether we were going to potentially have to fully shut down, not fully shut down, but we were looking at shutdowns again, potentially in key areas. And now, less than a month later, it's, hey, go ahead and take your mask
Take off your
off.
masks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that big a deal anymore. It's magical. And it begs the question, was the right correct all along in saying, why are you forcing this? Why are you doing this? It makes you wonder whether the motives were as pure as follow the science and, you know, what they would like to claim.
And I'd like to speak on Melanie's statement there. No, the vaccine is supposed to protect against that, not the mask.
That's true. That's a very good point.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you've got a mask or not. If you're vaccinated, that's supposed to protect. That's what they've been preaching anyways.
It's very interesting. And don't get me wrong, I am very thrilled the fact that we are easing these mandates and so on and so forth. Yay, I don't care. If Biden wants to get up tomorrow in the freaking State of the Union and say, hey, the vaccines worked and we're cool. Look at what the great job I did. I don't give a shit if he wants to claim responsibility for this. It's whatever. Honestly, if he wants to be a good person, he needs to thank the medical personnel that did their damn jobs and, got us past this.
Right.
But if he wants to take credit for it, Joe, you have so little that you can take credit for at this point in your administration. You go for it, bro.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Exactly. Mel says if everyone wears a mask, then the chance of anyone catching a virus goes way down. I would agree with that. I think that the biggest problem, I don't think anyone argues that the masks work. I think everybody argues that forcing the masks was the problem. Again, Manny, I tell you, a grown-ass man what to do inside of your house, you're going to be pretty pissed off.
And it's not that, Mike. I do disagree with how effective a mask is because I do work in the construction industry. I do see what happens whenever you are sanding a wall that you're about to paint.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys wear masks, and yet all that sheetrock dust is still getting inside the mask. I've seen them when they take them off.
That's a valid.
I've seen the painters after they have painted, and they still have paint that is on their mustaches. So I don't see that the masks really keep out a whole lot.
I can see both sides of this for sure. For sure, I can definitely see both sides.
Oh, don't straddle the fence, Mike. Come on.
Me, I'm old John Kerry flip-flopper. Anyway, we're going to get into John Kerry and his fucking great gaffe later on here tonight. But here's the other piece that we're likely to hear tomorrow during the State of the Union. President Biden has picked Ketanji, and again, I apologize to Judge Brown Jackson if I say this wrong, Ketanji Brown Jackson, as his pick for the Supreme Court nominee. And while she looks sterling, and I will say that this should be a rather easy confirmation, I think. There's some things that I want answered as far as her goes, as far as some of the stuff in her past goes, as far as when she was a district judge. But we have a story on Miss Jackson from the Wall Street Journal.
President Biden has nominated Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court.
Good afternoon.
The first Black woman nominated to be a justice on the nation's highest court. If confirmed, she would replace Justice Stephen Breyer, a liberal member of the court who announced his retirement in January. Judge Jackson served as a law clerk to Justice Breyer earlier in her career.
I've been a federal judge for 8 years, and I have a duty of independence. I clerked for 3 federal judges before I became a judge, and they were models of judicial independence. And what that has meant is that I know very well what my obligations are, what my duties are, not to rule with partisan advantage in mind.
What makes her a strong nominee in part is that professional diversity. This sort of allows Biden to fulfill a promise that he's made to diversify the court, not just by putting people in the court who might have a different demographic background, who might look different, but people who might also just bring a different kind of experience. Another thing that makes her a strong nominee is that she was just recently confirmed to the DC Circuit. And so it means that she's gone through the Senate confirmation process.
The president made his decision after meeting with the candidates, studying their histories and case records, and consulting legal experts, the White House said.
Although we have a pretty closely divided Senate, we think she still probably has a pretty smooth path to confirmation. Vice President Harris casts the deciding vote and gives Democrats the majority.
Mr. Biden's nomination won't change the balance of power on a conservative high court that has 6 justices appointed by Republican presidents, including 3 by former President Donald Trump. Judge Jackson currently serves on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, one of the nation's most influential courts and often a stepping stone for Supreme Court justices. She joined the court last June after spending 8 years as a federal trial judge in the nation's capital.
So President Biden has promised to diversify the federal judiciary in terms of both demographic background and professional diversity. And Judge Jackson ticks both of those boxes. She'll be the first Black woman on the court, and she also brings a background as a criminal defender, which we have not seen in many, many years.
I would say that my different professional background than many of the Court of Appeals judges, including my district court background, which will be different if I'm confirmed than many of my colleagues, would bring value. It's sort of like the Oliver Wendell Holmes quote that the life of the law is not logic, it's experience. And so I've experienced life in perhaps a different way than some of my colleagues because of who I am. And that might be valuable. I hope it would be valuable if I was confirmed to the court.
Republicans have tried to pin her down on this question of the quote unquote living constitution, the idea that constitutional interpretation should adapt to social change, should evolve over time. She had said in 2013 at a confirmation hearing at the district court that she disagreed with that. But more recently at her appeals court confirmation hearing, she really just declined to talk about it and deferred to the Supreme Court.
The Constitution is an enduring document. The Supreme Court has said a fixed meaning, that we're to look to the original words in the Constitution and interpret, as lower court judges, would interpret provisions the way in which the Supreme Court does, and they look at the text and meaning.
Judge Jackson has not said very much about what kind of a presence she will be on the court. As is common with lower court judges, we don't know very much about her judicial philosophy. And when she was asked about it at a recent confirmation hearing, she really declined to talk very much about it and deferred to the Supreme Court.
I think that I would like to be remembered as a judge who was both careful and thorough in my opinions.
It remains unclear exactly when Judge Jackson's confirmation hearings will begin, but New York Senator Chuck Schumer said they will take place in the coming weeks.
Okay, so here's the thing with Judge Jackson. I'm very, very on board with this. I think that she is great. I like the fact that she, when she was asked about her bias or what have you, or which side of the aisle she leans on, she kind of, was like, man, that doesn't really matter. Here's the thing that strikes me, and it's the one thing, and it's a big one for me, that really makes me nervous. I cannot find it. During that whole time, I was trying to find the exact number, but I cannot find the exact number. But on appeal, a lot of her decisions have been overturned by higher courts. And one of them, specifically, the appeal was returned with the wording that she had no legal basis for what she decided. And it was something to do with Trump. I can't remember the exact case, but it literally said there was no legal basis for her decision. That makes me that's the only sticking point I have. And that's a big sticking point to somebody on the Supreme Court.
It is. If a majority of her cases have been overturned, or a large number of them have been overturned, you have to wonder why. Honestly.
Absolutely.
Is she not following the letter of the law?
It makes me nervous. So again, Biden, I have no problem with Biden wanting to choose an African American or a woman. But was this the most qualified even African American woman that there was out there? I feel like there may have been better candidates. Was there an African American gentleman that was available that could have, been able to, still fill that need that he promised, which, again, I can't necessarily knock wanting your representation, even in the court, to look like America. Not a bunch of old white dudes, basically. I can understand that. What worries me is, was there enough homework done? Or again, timing. Did President Biden decide that he needed this win, so he had to rush through and choose a candidate rather
And
than doing as thorough a vetting process as possible.
This is his pick. If the Republicans do their job, they will ask those kind of questions whenever they go to actually check her background and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
I can guarantee you it's going to be brought up.
Just because this is his pick doesn't mean she's a shoo-in. I understand she's already been vetted, but you have to wonder if the Republicans will be smart enough to bring that kind of questioning up. Or are they just going to let it go? I mean, at the end of the day, you're correct. This was a sexist and a racist thing to pin on the SCOTUS is going to be a black woman. So that right there told us that he was more into what the person was, not who the person was.
Absolutely. I can see your point. Like I said, was there potentially a gentleman, an African-American gentleman? I have no problem with an African-American person or a woman being appointed. The problem I'm having, and again, it's a big one, is the number of cases. Now, if she can accurately describe what happened, and hey, people are allowed to make mistakes. Mel, that's a very good point. She is considered a very good, she's considered a better shoo-in than Amy Coney Barrett was when she was. So obviously there's something in her record that says that, this is a good candidate. Republicans and Democrats have been going on all the shows with the talking points and everything saying, yes, this is a damn good pick and we can get behind it. The one thing, though, that I keep hearing is the record of her being overturned. And again, that one term sticks out to me: no legal basis. If there's no legal basis or no constitutional basis for overturning something, that's a problem in the Supreme Court. So why not go back to the drawing board, President Biden, and say, okay, we have these other candidates who may have more stellar records. We may have a bigger fight on them because maybe they lean to the left a little bit more, but at least we know that we can trust their decisions. I guess that's what I'm getting at is, the trust factor with her is the problem. It's not going to be getting her through the process or anything. It's going to be the trust factor. Now, is she going to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? No. So she's not like the big dog. She's a justice, but still, it bothers me. Nobody's going to go 100 for 100. But the fact that they can find that as a problem is a problem to me.
Basically, what you're saying is she has a history of making the wrong decision because higher courts have overturned her rulings.
Exactly. And again, that one word, no legal basis, that makes me very nervous. Again, if you're making decisions based upon, if you're entrusted to make decisions in this case based upon the Constitution, you shouldn't be getting a report card back saying, hey, you may want to check this because you really don't have any legal basis for these decisions in a lower platform. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Again, I fail to wonder, or I wonder if there was anybody that could potentially have had a better record. Again, you know that he had more than one candidate. Mel also brings up a good point, though. She says that's the opinion of a higher court. That's not necessarily reflective of her competency. To be fair, that is a good point. It is the opinion of this one judge that was of a higher court that she had no legal basis. Maybe I'm putting too much into that, but that wording really bothers me.
And like you said, you can't find the numbers. So if there was a large number, I would say, yeah, there's an issue.
Right.
However, if it was just one or two, not as big an issue.
It was definitely more than one or two. I want to say, so she got, from what I remember, and this is coming off of memory, she was put on the bench within the last half of last year. And out of all of the cases she saw, I want to say the number 50 jumps out to me. 50 of them were overturned. That's a large number. But again, don't take me at what I am, and I can't find the exact number. But I do remember that being brought up, and it definitely plays in my mindset. Mel, besides the one though where they specifically pointed out that terminology was used, they didn't really get into a case by case. I would like to see a case by case. Maybe it's over filing shit. Literally, sometimes courts can be that crazy as, hey, you didn't put a comma here and it really goes here, and so on and so forth. So maybe it's something like that.
We can only hope that other people will bring this up, and maybe they can dive deeper into it and get some answers. Maybe that will start making the rounds in the news, and we can look at that at a later date.
One thing I will say too, though, is I personally am hoping she gets through, because this is the first time in a long time that I've heard bipartisan that she should get through, and she should get through easily. So that makes me happy that, that it's going to be a rather easy process. And Mel, you're absolutely right. Case by case would be very enlightening in this case. We went through all of Amy Coney Barrett and freaking dumbass Kavanaugh's stuff during his confirmation. Let's go ahead and do our due diligence, and I think they will. Okay, meat and taters time. Let's go ahead and get into it. Russia. Good Lord, this dude, every day he does something new. And now there's thoughts on his mental state. But we have the latest from about this afternoon from ABC News on this.
We do begin with Russia's war on Ukraine and a dramatic escalation of tensions. Vladimir Putin setting his nuclear forces on high alert as anger rises around the world. Hundreds of thousands protesting from Berlin to New York to Tel Aviv and Madrid.
More than 500,000 Ukrainians have fled their homes, crossing the border into Poland, Hungary, and Romania. As we come on the air, Ukrainian and Russian officials are meeting to discuss a possible ceasefire. Our team covering all the latest developments from across the globe. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell starts us off in Kyiv. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, George. That's right. Russia adding yet more forces to its invading army, but also facing hardening resistance across the country. And, I don't think I've seen anything quite like the mood in Ukraine right now. They said that they defend their land, but this is now an entire nation leading into the war efforts. And with the number of civilian casualties rising, it's now clear that Russia's claim that it's only targeting the military is untrue. Day 5 of the Russian invasion, but Ukraine standing strong. And this morning, President Zelensky addressing the nation, claiming thousands of Russian troops have been killed, saying Ukrainians have shown who we are. Russia has shown what it has become. This morning, potential peace talks as a Ukrainian delegation meets with Russian officials on the Belarus-Ukraine border. While Zelensky says it's likely they'll fail, he wants his people to know he'll always try for peace, even if there's little chance. According to the president, so far the fighting's taken the lives of 352 civilians, 16 of them children. The Ukrainian military mounting a fierce defense against more powerful invading Russian forces. The government releasing this drone video claiming they've hit a Russian military unit to the west of Kyiv. And these videos posted to social media show the clashes in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Government troops seen here battling on the streets with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. The Ukrainian government releasing these images, claiming to show Russian forces entering the city, then apparently being defeated. Government troops seen picking through the wreckage. But the Russian military continuing to bombard the city. One US defense official praising the Ukrainian resistance, saying they've been quite creative in finding ways to attack columns. Now Vladimir Putin appearing to raise the stakes higher, ordering his strategic nuclear defense forces onto heightened alert, claiming it's in response to so-called aggressive statements from NATO.
this is actually the most convincing sign we've seen yet that the war in Ukraine is not going according to plan. This is not a step that you take when you're winning a major conventional war.
But it may still be early days in this invasion. Satellite photos show a massive Russian military convoy headed in the direction of Kyiv, stretching over 3 miles long. With fears these troops could enter the city at any moment, many residents now taking up arms. We went to a weapons distribution centre in Kyiv. What we're seeing today are civilians taking up arms to try and defend their city of Kyiv. Let's just follow them a second. We're seeing people with anti-tank weapons, Kalashnikovs, are getting them from the police station. And these are men, some of them in their 50s, some just out of their teens, ready to stand and fight and defend. Ukrainian citizens are showing resistance around the country. In Berdyansk, which is occupied by Russian forces, locals came out facing a Russian tank, singing the Ukrainian national anthem. Well, remarkable scenes. President Zelensky, interestingly, now creating this international brigade for people, volunteers who want to come from overseas and fight together with the Ukrainians. And this morning, even releasing prisoners with combat experience who are willing to go to the front lines and fight. But I think after 5 days of Russian attacks and this invasion advancing, there is a real sense and a concern this morning that the worst is still yet to come. George.
You know, Russia has so much firepower. Okay, Ian, thanks. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks.
Okay, so let's start off with number one. Is there a more badass leader in this world than Vladimir Zelensky? Like, my dude was in there with his cell phone with everybody like, hey, what's up? Come fuck with us if you will. Like, my dude looked like he was straight out of a mobster movie. I love this dude.
I give it to the country. I mean, to see those civilians taking up arms against an invading force, that's awesome. That is real love for your country. That is showing that you don't want to be dominated by a different country. That is what freedom is about.
Absolutely, absolutely agree. And then on the other side, you've got a guy in Vladimir Putin who has, at every turn, he has escalated. He hasn't taken one step back since this thing began. Like, he went from being vague about nuclear weapons to literally putting them at the ready position. That's bred calls for the mental state of Vladimir Putin over the weekend and today. There's a lot of people. And Mel, you know, I don't know if you've seen this video, but Manny, you absolutely should. It's very powerful. The woman,
I have not. I didn't know that was even happening, so I will definitely seek out that video.
It's very powerful. But anyway, a lot of people believe.
Hold up. Let's go back to that because Melanie then says it's a bluff. What's a bluff?
Talking about Putin. Putting his,
okay. I thought she was talking about the sunflower seeds. I was like, okay. I'm on the same page.
I would think that I would agree. Putin. So you've had people from the Obama administration, the Bush administration, even the Trump administration saying that Putin is acting out of character over the past 7 to 14 days with his escalatory talks. A lot of people are wondering about his mental state at this point. I mean, you got to wonder about the mental state of anybody threatening nuclear war. But, I mean, Manny, they make a good point. Putin has never really went there yet.
Well, days. We say he's never went there. How long has he been thinking it, though? But yeah, I can see where they would start calling in his thought process. You know, maybe he does have some mental illness or something going on. I don't know. I think it is very dangerous to start talking about nukes because almost every other country has nukes. So you're looking at a no-win situation and at that point. It's very telling that they went ahead and signed paperwork to join the European Union, the Ukraine. So that right there is in straight defiance of Putin and Russia as they are trying to take the city.
Exactly. And, if you're Putin, maybe this is frustration because if you're Putin, you had to think this was over by now. You'd have had to, like, they don't have air superiority. They don't have anything right now to show for what they've done over the past 7 days. You have Russian soldiers, like this morning at the UN. They read the Ukrainian ambassador read from a text message from a Russian soldier to his mother shortly before he died. And he says, Mama, they told us that we were going to come in here and we were going to be welcomed with open arms. And these people wanted us to come here. And, saying things like, I'm scared, like you really, I think that people also need to take a step back. And I'm glad that the Ukrainian ambassador did that. People need to take a step back. I've seen a lot of people on social media. This is our first real social media war that we've seen. This thing is being covered by people, on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all of that stuff. And it's the first time you're seeing this. And I'm glad. I've seen a lot of people going after the Russian citizens and the Russian army and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to say that they should, I'm not going to say that they all are good, but I have to say that they're just doing what Putin's telling them to. And people need to remember that as well.
Yeah, and there is a difference in the warmonger and the soldiers. There's always been a big difference in the warmongers and the soldiers. Soldiers take orders and carry them out. Leaders have ratified war again and again, and it's not always in the best interest of the people.
You're absolutely right about that. Mel makes a very good point too. There are Russian citizens that are by hundreds of thousands being hoarded up every day, being thrown in jail.
That's what I was going to say. Despite the fact that they know they're going to jail and they know there is going to be some stiff penalties, most likely death, they are still out there protesting what Putin's doing.
Exactly. And, big heads up to them. Here's the thing, whether you believe, and we'll get into this here in a minute, whether you believe however this is supposed to end, however this is going to end, whatever will eventually sway Putin to stop being a son of a bitch and a cocksucker, and I can officially say that he is the worst person alive on this planet today. No matter what you believe, however it's going to end, whether you think it's the sanctions or whether you think it's cutting us off from Russian oil.
And you say that, I'm going to interrupt you right there. While last week we were kind of laughing at the sanctions that Biden has imposed, they honestly seem to be working because the people of Russia aren't able to get things that they normally had. And I think that plays into them protesting Putin as well.
I would agree with that. Here's my thing, though, with that statement. I think that the sanctions within the past 24 to 48, 72 hours, when we get into SWIFT, and again, I would like to point this out because everybody's not getting this. Switzerland fucking joined the damn sanctions, like neutral Switzerland joined the sanctions against the Russians.
They chose a side.
I mean, it's amazing. But, while those are working, I think it's the ones that we have seen over the past 72 hours that are working. Because the day after, and literally, I need somebody to explain to me what in the blue hell he was thinking. I want to say it was Tuesday because it was the day after we had the show. So, yeah, it was Tuesday. What in the blue hell he was thinking coming out there and announcing those weak sanctions. He said he wasn't going to sanction Putin. He said he wasn't going to, SWIFT wasn't on the table and all of this. And meanwhile, here's the problem, whether it be fact or not, President Biden right now looks like a weak leader. He looks like a follower. He has, in every instance of sanctions, followed the European countries. I believe it was either the UK or I believe it was the UK that was the first that started saying, I think it was Yeltsin was the first one to say, we're going to go ahead and take them out of SWIFT. And then, Germany came in. And finally, it was a good 24 hours later, Biden was like, okay, yeah, we're going to hop on.
And that may be by design, and that may be a better deal. I mean, you're looking at these countries that are already over there. They are part of the European Union. They are a lot closer than the United States is to being in this war.
Very true.
So to kind of sit back and let them take the lead is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
To not push the U.S. agenda on all of the European Union is not a bad thing.
Okay.
So in that, I will give him props, whether it was Biden intentionally or people advising him. I think this may be a smart move because, like I said, we're not supposed to be the police of the world. So it is cool to see the people that are closer to the situation actually making decisions.
And one thing I also got to give credit for all the talk that Trump for 4 years, NATO is worthless. NATO, isn't going to do what they did. NATO has stepped the hell up.
They stepped the hell up, and yes, they are showing good leadership. Yes. So Trump was 100% wrong on that.
Absolutely agreed. And, again, I'm glad we are back in there with taking care of that. And, again, this is a situation where I wonder when China falls. I wonder if that's what it's going to take for Putin. When China finally says, okay, no, we're good. We're not going to support you in this. I think that's what he is holding on to and he is grasping, is he knows China has his back right now. But how far will China have his back is my question. Is China willing to get into a conflict and send people to back him up? And that's where everybody thinks, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree. A lot of Republicans say what we need to do is we need to cancel out any Russian oil that we're importing, and we need to immediately open up the Keystone Pipeline and the federal reserves of oil. And we need to become self-sufficient on oil like we were under the Trump administration is the party line. If you listen to Democrats, it's a wait and see. Hey, we're going to sanction the hell out of them, and eventually we're basically going to starve them out. And then there's also the thought that somebody just needs to get in that damn Kremlin and kill that motherfucker. That's my personal opinion. Melanie on Twitter this last weekend was trying to get hashtag push Putin out the window trending, which would have been hilarious. But I mean, no matter what you look at, I think it's China. I think the answer is if we can separate China and Russia, I think that's the answer.
And you're saying that, but I think China is waiting to see how far Russia can get. Because the further Russia can get, the greater the hope I think China has in getting far as well.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, the fact that the Ukrainian citizens are keeping the Russian military at bay, I think maybe playing into the fact that China has not made a move yet.
Right. Very true. And
well, between that and the fact that NATO is helping the Ukraine as much as they can. I mean, I don't want to put this all on NATO because, like I said, I'm giving props as much as I can to the citizens of the Ukraine nation because they came out and said, this is our country, not yours.
And I mean, again, as much as I want to give credit to the citizens of Ukraine, and they have done fucking fantastic as far as, what they've done, Lord knows they should have been defeated long ago. And if it wasn't for the average everyday citizen, they probably would have been. However, you look at it, and I have to say, part of it is tied to President Zelensky coming out every night. And, again, as we laugh it off because we think it's just badass, or I think it's just badass, him making these videos and posting them on YouTube like, hey, motherfucker, you ain't killed me yet. I'm still here. Like, I think that empowers the Ukrainian people. I think they draw strength from every one of his videos where you're seeing him come in and you're seeing him. Comparing that to what we currently have over here is scary to me, because put us in that same situation. I don't know that we have the same kind of leadership currently in office.
We don't. I'll be one to say it. You know, it would surprise me very much if Biden showed even a tenth. And not just Biden. I mean, you've got to look at our vice president. You have to look at our speakers. I don't think our leaders have even a tenth of the gusto that they have shown over there.
You know, it's funny you bring up our leaders. I want to play you a video from a BBC interview that John Kerry did over this past weekend that I find utterly just shocking and reprehensible. Here we go.
I'm very concerned about Ukraine because of the people of Ukraine and because of the principles that are at risk in terms of international law and trying to change boundaries of international law by force. I thought we lived in a world that had said no to that kind of activity, and I hope diplomacy will win. But massive emissions consequences to the war, but equally importantly, you're going to lose people's focus. You're going to lose certainly big country attention because they will be diverted, and I think it could have a damaging impact. So, you know, I think hopefully President Putin would realize that in the northern part of his country, they used to live on 66% of a nation that was over frozen land. Now it's thawing, and his infrastructure is at risk, and the people of Russia are at risk. And so I hope President Putin will help us to stay on track with respect to what we need to do for the climate.
So, the giant tragedy in all of this.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Is Kerry trying to say that basically Putin is going to take Ukraine and hopefully Putin can control the climate?
I don't know what the fuck he's saying. What I draw from that video is that he's saying it is sad that our focus is being taken away. The saddest part of all of this that he decides to bring up is that we are taking focus away from Build Back Better and climate initiatives to go to do this. Motherfucker, there are people dying every single day. And the last thing that they give a damn about is the climate right now. I understand that. I don't think that's what he meant, but that's what he said. And
the way he's talking, you know, him specifically saying that we need to get with Putin to help get this under control is as if Putin is going to take Ukraine and be the leader over all of that.
I think I'm going to be honest. I think the White House and the whole administration has given up on Ukrainians actually winning this situation. And I'm going to be honest with you, with the fact that there's a 40-mile long convoy outside of Kyiv right now, it's over. But the fact
17 miles is the last. Do what?
40 as of today.
Can I finish, Mike?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. 17 miles is the last report that I've seen as far as where the convoy was at based on or in relation to the capital. So
They haven't said where it is in relation. I know they said it's like basically knocking on the door, but 40 miles long, that's no fucking.
Yeah, 40 miles long is impressive, but yeah, the last report I saw, which was from the 6 o'clock national news tonight, was they were 17 miles outside of the capital.
I don't think they have enough stingers to deal with 40 miles worth of Russian tanks, which is, rather depressing. They put up a hell
right, but you've also got to look at NATO. If they actually do, excuse me, if Russia actually does come down and start breaching buildings inside the capital, is NATO going to launch an offensive?
Well, here's the thing. Unfortunately, because Ukraine is not part of NATO, we can't. Like, strategically, I absolutely despise this, but strategically, unless he fires, essentially, what we're waiting on is him to fuck up and fire a bullet into Poland. All it's going to take is one bullet into Poland, and we're fucking him up. But until that happens, unfortunately, magically our hands.
And you say that, but I mean, you've got to look at the citizen death toll. What they say, 352 civilians. So they have already talked about that they can show this is a war crimes because they're targeting civilians. So I mean, how much does it have to go if they actually get into the capital of Ukraine and are killing citizens? I don't see that NATO really has to follow the rules.
I would agree. I mean, let's be honest. We already know that Russia's committing war crimes left and right over there. The UN is already talking about bringing up war crime sanctions, or not sanctions, but talking about bringing Putin up on war crimes. So, I mean, it's there. Here's the thing, though. I wonder how much, you're right. I wonder how much they're willing to deal with. Like, are we going to sit back and watch as, Ukrainians are innocently gunned down in their, in their homes, basically, as this is happening? But right now, that's what we are doing. I don't know if you saw this report on the news, but there's a report that Russia dropped basically a bomb that is right underneath nuclear status. They call it the father of all bombs.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
And basically, if it's true, essentially what they were describing it, even though it's not nuclear, people within a certain area can be incinerated immediately. Just far-reaching implications. I think right now the worry for me is that he's going to drop a low-grade nuke. I don't think he's going to drop a nuke like we dropped on, Japan. But
right.
I think he's gonna fire one of them some bitches off.
And talking about Kerry and the climate, the three largest proponents I shouldn't say proponents, the three largest contributors to the decline of the climate, based on reports, are China, India, and the United States. So we're in the process of trying to take care of what we can do. There's no way we're going to tell China what they need to do.
Right.
And India, to my knowledge, we haven't even really looked in their direction as far as trying to push them to do any kind of corrective action.
Now, here's the one, though, that did drop that just came out of left field, like nobody was talking to you, motherfucker. Why are you running your mouth? But Brazil randomly came out in support of Putin today. Like, where the fuck did that come from? But Brazil came out in support of Putin today. I will say this, they talked about the peace talks on the Belarus border. Apparently, what came of it, according to Ukraine officials, what Russia wants is that Ukraine will never join NATO, and a bunch of basically surrendering to Putin, kissing the ring, essentially. Which, of course, Zelensky, just seeing what I've seen over him over the last week, that shit ain't happening. But there's only one way I see this ending. I see this ending with him taking over the Ukraine. I think it will happen. I think it'll happen within the next week. I think he's going to march right up to the Polish border, and he's going to think about it. I think he really is going to think about it. Of course, he knows what's going to happen if he does. But, I mean, he's crazy. I'm buying into it. He's crazy. He's off his rocker. I don't think he's mentally all there, and I think he's willing to try it. I don't know if China's going to have his back as much as what he thinks, but I do. I think this time next week.
And I don't know so much that China's going to have his back, but China has interest, self-interest, that based on his success and failure, China will try similar tactics.
Oh, yeah, Taiwan, they're already flying fucking research shit over Taiwan. Like, they're already dabbling their toes in shit. Like, it's crazy. But, Manny, for that nice little segue, my American Idiot of the Week is going to be John Kerry, because climate ain't got shit to do with what's going on over in the Ukraine, and how fucking dare you bring that shit up.
Right. My American Idiot of the Week, and you've got to remember that America is more than just the United States. I'm looking at the North.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
But my American Idiot of the Week is the Canadian government, who is still allowing the Russian oil and fuel to be coming in. So they're basically still funding this war for Russia.
Right.
So yeah, the Canadian government is my American Idiots of the Week. Either help us or get the hell out the way. I mean, seriously, to have all these sanctions that we're putting on them to try to starve them out, and they're over there just throwing money at them. I don't understand it.
That's a large scale problem. And I mean, again, I know that our, friends on the left and everybody won't agree with this, but again, we need to step up and do that ourselves. We need to cut off any ties with Russia as far as oil goes. I know that Biden is worried as far as that goes with the price skyrocketing, but how do you fix that? Immediately open the Keystone XL pipeline, open up the reserves, at least temporarily, until we get out of this mess.
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, well, Manny, let's go ahead and get the heck out of here unless you got anything else.
Before we go, I want to thank the people that are watching us live, and well, one just dropped off. Gee, thanks. I do appreciate y'all chiming in. Melanie, thank you so much for interacting with us. Aaron, thank you for your comment. I mean, it wasn't really about our topics, but thank you for commenting. Melanie, thank you for interacting with the topics that we're actually doing. And for the people that were on, I think I saw 4 was our biggest as we were live. So I want to thank them for spending some time with us while we're going through this. And as always, I encourage y'all to give your opinions. I mean, we are by no means saying that we are right in the opinions we have. These are just our opinions. But we definitely encourage y'all to chime in with your opinions and let us know some things, because I mean, we can always be taught things as we're going live to all of you. So I'm like, I had no idea there was somebody out there giving sunflower seeds. So Melanie, thank you for sharing that, and I'm definitely going to go check out that video.
Look that up, brother. But For the Manny Hispani, I am Money Mike, and hopefully this time next week we won't be talking about Russia and Ukraine anymore, and hopefully Ukraine would have fucked them all up. But with that being said, you guys have a great week. We'll see you next week.